When I was younger, every year for Christmas, I would drive upstate to my aunt's house on a long stretch of highway. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the road. All I know is it runs nearby Akron, New York at some point. However, most of the drive is through rural areas with little to no towns nearby. So it was the dead of the night, and my groggy self had gotten off a long shift and had to drag my ass to my aunt's house, since my extended family was expecting me the following morning. Near halfway through my drive, I realized I was low on gas, which irritated me. My brother told me that he would fill it up the day before, so either he had forgotten or he was straight lying. I saw an archaic looking sign for a gas station off the next road. It wasn't an official road sign, literally a pole with a slab of metal attached with gas off next exit or something along those lines painted on it. That seemed a little sketchy, but people do the same thing for fruit stands on the highways, so whatever. I pulled off the next exit on some dilapidated country-ass road through dense woods. The whole thing was creepy and surreal. I kept expecting Leatherface to come running out of the trees with a chainsaw. Anyways, eventually I came to a gas station and quickly realized it hadn't been open for years. It was all rusted and the convenience store's roof was caving in. The gas pumps had all been taken out as well. I pulled over next to it and checked my gauge. I would probably only make it another half mile before running out, so I called AAA and asked them to send a truck over. Now I played the waiting game. I left my engine on because when the headlights were off, everything was pitch black and my paranoid self was sitting there in an abandoned gas station in the middle of the forest in complete darkness. Most of the wait was uneventful until I sensed movement around the side of the old store where my lights are pointed. I looked up but didn't see anything more, so I looked back down at my phone. Then over the sounds of the night, I hear someone yell, "Hey buddy, come here," in a demanding tone. I look up and I shit you not, there's a dude standing by the old store, looking towards me, illuminated by my headlights. He looked like a run-of-the-mill homeless guy. I was honestly spooked and figured he must be squatting there. Still watching him, I rolled down my window and yelled something like, "Yeah, what's up?" Still mentally crapping myself, I had my foot ready to floor it out of there at the first sign of trouble. "You got any change?" "Nah, I don't, sorry man." I looked up at him. He has this kind of vacant expression and he's standing stiff. Then I see more movement. There are heads. About 20 or so heads peeking out from behind the trees beyond the man I was talking to. I can't see them clearly at all, but they were definitely people, literally just heads staring at my direction from all around the trees. I see another guy beginning to walk from around the gas station, so I then turned around and sped off. I got as far away from the place as my tank could take me and updated AAA on my location. The driver came back over and filled me up, and I didn't say anything. After he left, I wanted to call the cops, so I called the nearest town's sheriff department. They said that they would send a trooper over, and I gave them the location. When I got to my aunt's house, they called me back and said whoever it was gone, but that they could tell a large number of people had been living there for a while. Blankets, canned food, the usual. The whole situation still freaks me out, but frankly, I can consider myself lucky, as I'll always have such a creepy story to tell, and I'm just glad nothing bad happened. To the creepy dudes at the gas station, let's not meet. I went to college that was integrated into a big city, so even though there was a campus, there was plenty of shops, back streets, public transportation, and just regular people walking around. So I was part of a club that went late into the night. I usually only stayed till 9 or 9:30 and then would leave, usually with a friend. The club was in the center of campus, while I lived east of it, about a 15 to 20 minute walk. This was a foggy late fall, early winter night. My friend had left early because they weren't feeling well. I ended up staying late and began to walk home close to 10:30 p.m. So I started walking down a back street that was quiet but led right to my dorm. It was after a few minutes that I heard some footsteps somewhere behind me. I stopped, thinking it was a jogger, and moved to the side to let them pass. Then I noticed that there was no one coming and the footsteps had stopped. I shrugged and started walking. Then the footsteps started up again. I stopped, and it stopped. I started to get a bad gut feeling and quickly walked to the side street that connected to the back street to the bigger main street. This street had a lot of lights, plenty of cars, and still a good number of people on it. I walked back to my dorm from there. The next morning, I wake up and check my emails. One was from the campus alert system. Apparently, an hour after I got back to the dorm, someone was stabbed on the back street. Victim was rushed to the hospital and survived, saying that the perpetrator followed them down the back street before stabbing them. The perpetrator was never caught, but I have no doubt that that was the person that tried to follow me, and I'm glad I trusted my gut. After this, I made sure to never stay at club past 9:30, and to always leave with someone that was at least walking in the same direction as me. This happened earlier today, and I'm still creeped out. We live in a cozy neighborhood where we know all of our neighbors. We have a huge front yard, and since I could see them from the front window, while I stay in the living room, I sometimes let my kids play outside alone. We live directly across the street from my mother, and like I said, we know basically everyone else too. Today, my 3-year-old wanted to go out in the front yard and try out her new sand toys. I send her out while I finish my breakfast. She's out there for a while, and then she walks out of sight. I step out to remind her to stay in the front where I could see her. I take the dogs out with me and put him on his leash. My dog immediately starts barking at something, and I noticed a van parked in the corner of our yard that was previously blocked from my view by the other car in the driveway. A man is parked in our yard, watching my daughter. He looks up, sees me, and then speeds away like a bat out of hell. Before I could even process what's going on, Kid didn't even seem to notice, and I hurried her inside. So yeah, guy in the van, let's not meet. Hey guys, I'm going to tell you something that happened around 4 months ago, and I'm a 14-year-old male. We have a Bernese mountain dog called Ava, who is 2 and weighs about 120 pounds, so she is very big. She's quite a lazy dog, but also seems to be alert at all times. So one night, my parents went out for dinner and left me home with Ava. I was downstairs watching TV, and my lounge is right next to the front door. Around 8 p.m., the door rings and I open it to see a guy in fairly plain clothes standing there, and he told me that he had a delivery here. I was confused because he didn't look like a delivery driver and had no parcel. Suddenly, I turn my head to see another guy on the side of the driveway, which goes to the back door, and he starts to walk towards the back door. I freak out, and the guy at the door notices this and barges through, shouting for the other guy. This is when Ava wakes up and begins to let out the loudest bark I've ever heard, making the guy stumble back. She rushes towards him and jumps up, grabbing his shoulder and literally throwing him out the door. His buddy came along but saw Ava and started to run. The other guy managed to slip out of Ava's grip and run down the road. I somehow managed to get Ava to stay, so I didn't lose her, and they got away. I was shook up and rang my parents and the police and gave them my statement. Safe to say Ava got plenty of treats from then on, and I always keep her nearby when I'm on my own. When I was a student teacher, I was 21 and working with mostly seniors in high school, many of which were 17 or 18 years old. One day, the mentor teacher I was working with pulled me aside from teaching class to inform me that the other teachers have overheard some students telling each other that they wanted to do me. While disturbing, many of my friends and colleagues insisted that that is a fact of being a young teacher, working with high schoolers. The next day, I had a few girls in my class approach me and inform me that 3 boys were no longer just talking about what they wanted to do, but were graphically describing what they were planning to do with me in the coming weeks after school in the parking lot. Far more details than I'd like to share. I went to the administration immediately, and they handled it very quickly and professionally. I was very grateful for their support. I was never touched or harmed by any of these students, thankfully. What scared the absolute crap out of me, however, in the later weeks, one of the boys was arrested and pulled out of school. I didn't find out immediately, but I eventually learned that he was being held for the alleged sexual assault of his younger sister. It makes me sick thinking about. I generally hope I never meet him again. It's terrifying to think what could have happened if I had not had some wonderful staff and students looking out for me. Back when I was in the 3rd grade, there was a hill with a playground at the top. One day, while everyone was playing at the park, as it was recess, this middle-aged man wearing nothing but cargo shorts came to the bottom of the hill and leaned over the fence that was there. He began to call kids over to him. When kids came over to him, he wrapped them in blue tape, mainly around their hands. This went on for 15 minutes when the 4th grade science teacher, the saint she is, began to run down to the guy. Now, this woman can be very intimidating when she wants to be. She later became the principal. Anyway, the second the guy saw her, he walked away. He obviously didn't really care about getting caught. So, creepy blue tape guy, let's not meet. I don't have a car, so Uber and Lyft is my main mode of transportation to get to work. This morning, I requested an Uber a half hour before I had to get there, and the pickup was supposed to take less than 5 minutes. For some reason, my Uber driver kept going in circles. He ended up calling me, asking me for directions, and I was telling him exactly where he needed to go, and so was the GPS in the background. At that point, I was irritated and asked if there was a way he could cancel it because I was going to be late. He said that he couldn't and ended up finding his way to my apartment. At the time, I was supposed to be at work. He kept apologizing and I mumbled, "It's fine, I just need to get there." He ended up taking me to another store that was on the way and asked, "This is right?" It took all of me not to just blow up. I calmly gave him directions to the actual store I worked at and just told him to please listen to the GPS. He finally gets me to my job and I'm nearly 20 minutes late. And as soon as he parked, I muttered, "Thanks," got out and bolted to the office to clock in. An hour or so into my shift, one of my managers came up to tell me that the Uber driver has been harassing the people in the front of the store, trying to get a hold of me, my manager, to take fault for me being late and apologize to me. You need a membership to go into the store, so he kept getting kicked out. He tried 4 or 5 separate times to come in. Another hour goes by and a different manager approaches me to let me know that the Uber driver had resorted to blowing up the store's phone, begging to speak to me. She asked me not to leave alone and to be on the lookout in case he came back. I contacted Uber support multiple times to let them know, and you want to know what they did about it? They gave me a $3 credit. I made sure to give him a 1 star so I wouldn't get him as a driver again, but it's just scary to think that he knows where I live and work. In December of 2018, my ex and I split up after 7 years in a relationship. I was new to the dating game, so I didn't just want to jump into it. In February, I met this guy at a bar. The second time I met him, we exchanged numbers. By the end of March, I was feeling pretty comfortable and invited him to a party at my house. He stayed after the party, and one thing led to another. Well, after it was all said and done, I had a weird vibe. He was too pushy and made me uncomfortable, so I asked him to leave. I planned never to speak to him again. That is until he started to text me from random numbers. He would say things like, "Hope you're having fun fishing," when I didn't even post to social media that I was fishing. "I hope the movie was good," when I hadn't even posted anything online that I was at the movies. He would text me to ask me where in the bar I was, at different bars, when I never told anyone or posted where I was going. We had no mutual friends, so he was following me. The final straw was when my friend took me to Washington, D.C. for my 25th birthday celebration. We bar hopped all over the city. Around 2:30, we come out of the last bar we were at and decided to get some cookies across the street. As we were coming out of the cookie shop, guess who pops up? You guessed it, He does. He goes, I hope blank blank and blank were fun. I wanted to say hi earlier, but since you haven't been replying to my messages, I didn't want to freak you out. I was terrified. My friend's husband thankfully stepped in and called him out and threatened to call the police. I changed my number and moved, and thankfully, I haven't heard from him since. So to the guy I mistakenly had my first one-night stand with, let's not meet again. So I was 13 at the time this happened. It was coming up to my mom's birthday and I had no idea what to get her, so I called my aunt for help. We agreed to meet in town Saturday afternoon after my piano lesson so we wouldn't have to rush. I went to my piano lesson as usual, dropped my books back off at the house, and went to the bus stop to get a bus into town. As I was waiting, a taxi pulled up and the driver rolled down his window and called out, "Are you off to town, hon? I'll give you a lift." Without moving closer to the taxi, I replied that I couldn't afford the taxi and the bus would be there in a few minutes. It was as usual running late. The taxi driver became insistent that I get in the taxi and that he wouldn't charge me to go to town. I stood my ground, refusing to get in. His tone became more aggressive as he demanded I get into his taxi. Over the next minute or so, someone else arrived at the bus stop and the taxi driver sped off, swearing at me for not getting into the taxi. I told my aunt what happened when I met her in town, and she asked if I got the license plate number so she could report the incident. I explained that I didn't want to move closer to the taxi to get the number, and that at first I thought he was just looking for a fare. My aunt was pretty sure that if I had gotten into the taxi, I wouldn't have been dropped off in town, but taken somewhere else, and told me if this ever happened again to tell him, "Fuck off, or I will scream," and if they were to approach, that I should run. So taxi driver, who may have been trying to kidnap me, let's not meet again. This story is about a man named John that I met while working retail. John is an older white man, in his mid-50s, well-dressed, well-spoken, shoulder-length steel gray hair, and a low ponytail tied back. At the time, I was working at a farm and a pet supply store. I was called over to help a customer look at electric fences and shock collars for dogs, which I am steadfastly against, but I had to help the customer. I asked him what I could help him with, and he said he was interested in an electric fence for his dogs, since he had a cabin in the woods and wanted to make sure they didn't get away. He said, "Oh yes, I'm looking to use shock collars, maybe on you." Thoroughly creeped out, I tried to laugh it off and tell him no thank you. I finally got him someone that knew more than I did, and thought that that would be the end of it. Of course it wasn't. The next time he saw me, he said, "I've been looking for you. I bought what I wanted. I wanted to slap you the next time I saw you." I told him if he ever hit me, I would absolutely hit him back. So then, a few days later, he told me that he would really like to take me out for lunch one day. I politely declined. He would come into the store and look for me, but I would see him before he saw me. One day, I saw him first. I tried to hide until he left, but no, he found me in the back of the department. He said, "Just so you know, I'm not dressed up for you today. I have a meeting with the bank, but if I didn't, I'll be taking you out for lunch. You know, I can tell you dye your hair. You look so beautiful, but that doesn't mean anything to you, does it? It might mean something if you like me back." He was never banned from the store, even after one of my managers heard him say these things to me. But my coworkers would tell me when he was in the store and help me get away from him until he left. I haven't seen him since I quit, and I'm so thankful.